morning, everybody out there in cyberspace. Welcome to Ad Absurdum. I'm Alex Adams.
I'm Dallas Kosabowski.
And we want to welcome you back to our 9th episode, I think, of Ad Absurdum.
Do you get the number wrong on purpose every time?
I literally don't. No, it's we're in the teens, right? We're getting up there.
Yeah.
You can read the description, everybody. We hope you had a great time in between listening to both of those. If you're binging, we hope you had a great 4 seconds. This is the show where we take a topic and we argue into absurdity. And we have a special guest today, Toronto comic Ricky Lima.
Hey.
Ricky Lima, say hi to the cyber world.
Hey everybody, real happy to be on Ad Absurdum. I'm a comic writer. Sometimes people think comics are like I'm a comedian. I'm not that funny, guys. I'm not.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. Yeah. So let me recount. Tell us about some of your work. I was supposed to do some research and have a little like paragraph. Ricky enjoys going walks on the beach.
I was just going to do myself.
He's done these awards, but no, go. Yeah.
Okay, well, so I started writing comics in like 2012, I think it was, and then just kind of went from there. Released a book called Deep Sea, is like a little 8-page book, and then we did a 12-page book at like a comics marathon where it was like you had 12 hours to make a 12-page book. Cool. So we did that, and then that was really popular. So we just kind of continued that series. That was the Black Hole Hunters Club. And that was pretty cool. It was about like some space bounty hunters going around trying to collect bounties, but they kind of suck at it. So it was like not very good. And then after that, my newest book that just came out is called Happily Ever After. And it's about a princess who gets kidnapped and then uses a dating app to find knights to come and rescue her. So that was pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the runner-up Best Graphic Novel
That's right.
2018 for the Canadian Independent Comic Book Wiki Awards. So
yes,
and Ricky himself is the favorite writer awarded for that. So
yeah,
congrats.
Super cool. And what's cool about that is it's like fan voted, right? So it's not like just some like old white guys in a room like, yeah, this guy's the best. It's like the people who actually read it. Yeah. So
where can people reach out to you, Ricky, if they want to like contact you? Like what kind of stuff you got going on?
I have a Twitter. It's at King K Rule. K or the rule is RULE, not like the Donkey Kong villain. But and then I have a website too, Lime Press Online, where you can like buy all the books and stuff. So that's probably the best ways.
Yeah.
Or Instagram, I'm king.k.rule on there as well. So
that's good taste. But by total sidebar, did you ever see the mid-aughts Teletoon CGI? And
it was so good. It was
oh my god!
I don't understand why they gave Donkey Kong like an R&B flavor to it. Like he never struck me as
series. That was like
yes.
You had Rare with whoever the main sound designer at Rare was cranking out those amazing tunes on the N6 the NES chipset, and then whoever was the audio designer on the cartoon was like, yeah, let's just do it R. Kelly. Let's do mid-aughts R&B.
It's so weird.
Oh my god.
Donkey Kong is weird. We'll get into that probably. That's a future podcast.
That's a good one, yeah.
Discussion. But
cinema.
Yeah, so you got Deep Sea, Happily Ever After, Black Hole Hunter. Yeah. I just recently read through all of them actually, and
nice. Were they good?
Yes, they're good. So how do I get into this without just sounding like a praise fest? So obviously, like most of my experience with comics is actually kind of mainstream, like DC, Marvel, superhero stuff mostly. I don't normally dip into independent, mostly because I don't know about a lot of it, but also you really kind of have to do your research to figure out like what kind of genre or mood the art and the subtext are, or you're gonna go down some back alleys of comic books. I don't like this at all. But no, Deep Sea was cool. Obviously, by the name and the genre, it was like, you should start marketing next to any Shape of Water kind of stuff, because it's like, it's nautical, it's monsters and stuff like that. So that was cool. I liked kind of I'm no expert, but it seemed to me like kind of a minimalist art style that highlighted special things through the like the use of color at the random times. Like you had it was like almost black and white or something, and then whenever like corruption was spreading, it was yellow.
Yeah, there's like 3 colors to the whole thing. Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
which is cool. And then Black Hole Hunters Club is like if you took the potential of the Green Lantern movie and the feel of Guardians of the Galaxy, and then made it about a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
that's kind of my synthesis of it, because it's set in this like huge universe. It's very alien. There's like nothing really human about it all. The characters are all very unique and dynamic, and I feel like you grasp onto them right away. But then there's they got a lot going on, and it's fun and it's silly. I like you said, they're like bounty hunters who aren't really good at it, and that made for.
Yeah.
And then
Thanks, man.
Happily Ever After is for those readers out there, it's a princess gets kidnapped and uses a dating app to find knights, but it turns a lot of things on its head. So it's a fairy tale, but it turns gender stereotypes upside down. It turns a few things. So I guess a good question. So for the listeners out there, if you're interested at all, definitely check out, and I'll put some links down below and such. There's kind of your review from us here at Absurdum. But so Ricky, what got you into comics and such?
I think like everyone, like you guys probably had the same kind of experience where as a kid you kind of read comics, especially with the 90s TV shows like X-Men and Spider-Man and stuff. It really got you into like the characters. And then maybe in high school you kind of like fall off and you're like, whatever, I'm like too cool for this stuff. But then in university, you kind of realize that there's more to it, and then you get into like things like Watchmen and Sandman and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, okay, this is what comics can be. And then from there, you just kind of go into the deep end, and then you're just reading comics like crazy. So for me, that's basically how it started. Like my brother, he got caught up in the 90s comics boom where like everyone thought every comic ever was going to be worth money. So he was like collecting a lot of books, and I was watching like a lot of the TV shows. And then in university I started picking up like comics in order to read them, and I was like, whoa, like stuff like The Dark Knight was like really catching my attention. And I always enjoyed writing, but like with prose, I always find it so hard to like do all the in between stuff. You know what I mean? Where it's like, how do you make it interesting that he goes to his car and like opens up the door and it's like. That stuff always bored me.
So now you just outsource it to your artists?
Yeah, exactly, right? So now I'm just writing the dialogue and they do all the boring stuff. So then it worked out pretty good. And then I mean, making comics is tough because you got to print it and you got to sell it and everything. So it's not as easy as doing a prose book, but it's a lot more fun, that's for sure.
Nice. Looks like we lost Alex here. We'll add him back in. Yeah, okay. Well, that sounds great. So if you want to pursue this kind of thing, I mean, is there any kind of like formal training for it, or did you just kind of, what's after kind of doodling or working on your craft and such, what's the next step? What do you think?
I think the next step, well, in Toronto especially, there's a place called the Comic Book Boot Camp run by this guy Ty Templeton, and it's really cool because he's like a vet in the industry. He did like the Batman Adventures comics, he did some Spider-Man books, and so he runs a class that is mainly focused on drawing, but he has another one that's like on writing and stuff, and he's got some really cool like thoughts on writing and structures and ways to structure stories and stuff. So that stuff's really great, and so that's one way to do it. But other than that, there's not like really classes you could take other than that Comic Book Boot Camp that will train you to be a comic writer. You know what I mean? Comic writing is it's a relatively new kind of format. You know what I mean? Because comics really only really started having scripts, I don't know, in the 50s really. So, comics are about 7
That can tell.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Silver Age stuff.
So, and comic scripts are weird because no one reads them besides the artist. You know what I mean? That's the only real person who's going to look at them. So when you're writing a script, it's almost just a conversation with the artist. And as long as they understand what's going on, it doesn't matter, right? So
nice. And how's the comics community? I mean, it seems like it would be a a slam dunk, like everybody's loving their craft, but are there any kind of social challenges there, or is everybody just awesome and on board all the time?
No, I mean, not everyone's awesome on board all the time, but the community is pretty small, so like anyone who does suck kind of gets recognized and like called out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But usually people are pretty cool. You run into the problem where a lot of people are like overly ambitious or like too ambitious for their own like skill levels, so they're always constantly talking about doing things but never really end up doing anything. That can be annoying because you're like, all right, man, just like focus on one thing, you know what I mean? So I try to help those kinds of people sometimes, but sometimes they're just so like in their own head that you can't, like, no matter what you do, you can't help them, right?
What would be the one thing you would either tell your past self just getting into comics in high school, as you said, or somebody in your position a couple years earlier? What's the one piece of advice you would give, a beginning writer, a beginning comic writer?
Yeah, I'd probably say like just do it. A lot of people get caught up in like the idea of like, you know, they need a publisher, they need some kind of like outside acceptance or these gatekeepers to let them in. But nowadays, like, you don't need any of that stuff. Like with the web and with the way like print on demand works, like you could just make something and put it out there, right? So a lot of people, because it always sucks. People are like, well, I have a really good story to tell, but like no publisher wants it. And it's like, be your own publisher, put it out yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I was starting, I was really worried about like finding an artist and maybe doing something that an artist would want to do. But if you have a really cool story, like, people will flock to it and artists will be interested in working on that cool story. You know what I mean? So you just got to do it. You know what I mean? You can't worry about what other people think.
This is a total side question, but just as you said, like a cool story will attract artists. Have you ever seen opportunities in the other way around? Like a really cool artist will attract writers. Like writers will be like, I want to write for this guy.
I think so. Like you see it a lot in more modern like professional comics, like people like Sean Murphy or Sean. He did that White Knight book, the Batman White Knight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of writers will like just want to work with him just because he's so good, right? And then in the professional level, like they got the money at that point to, you know, afford to pay for guys like that, right? So yeah. Or what else? Like
I was gonna say, I imagine that like if you wanted to write in a certain genre, then you might seek out, or you might be attracted to someone's work who focuses on that genre, right? If somebody's doing a bunch of artistry for, you know, I don't know, medieval kind of stuff, and you're like, I want to write, or I have an idea for a story for that, but it's different than what I normally do, then maybe you might seek out someone who has the style you want, right? Because if you're writing like the badass hero, like whatever, you can look like, this is an interesting thing about comics is that you can look at art and be like, that won't fit my tone. Next. Oh, that's a really great rendition of Knights and stuff, but it's more like, what's that one game called? Like Children of Light or whatever. It's too like soft and too like, you want some like Dark Souls lines in your medieval whatever. So I could imagine that. I mean, that's what I would see. I'm no writer, but I could imagine that you might just kind of search around portfolios and be like, yeah, I like what that guy's doing. I can fit the tone of that. Let's go for it.
Yeah, and it works out really good when you're trying to sell a book too, because people can pick it up and immediately know if they want it or not. You know what I mean? Whereas with like a prose book, you're gonna have to sit down and read it and like look at it, and that takes forever. You know what I mean? So in like a con situation, or like just a really quick glance, people kind of immediately know if they want this book or not, right?
It's weird because you know, you're taught in so many ways, like don't judge a book by its cover and don't just let appearances like drive it. But with something like animation and with comics, the look is so important, and
it's integral.
Well, I mean, you know, even like if we focus on superheroes for a second, there's a million artists working on the same character and the same story, and there's lots of times where I'm like, this story is really great, but this art is making me like not enjoy what I'm looking at, what I'm reading. And it's crazy to think about that, because every other place you watch a movie and you're like, these effects are crap, but the acting's good, it's funny or whatever. But like usually I find with comics, yeah, the artistry is a make or break for people. It's not like other mediums where you're like, I don't care. I don't care what how the sauce is made. I just want to enjoy the ride, right?
There's a really good example from a video game, which was Nidhogg 2. Nidhogg 1 was like that combo. I'm so glad you've seen that, because like the original game is like really pixelated and it sort of leaves a lot to the imagination of the player.
It's very elegant too.
Yeah, it's minimalist. It was very crisp, and then apparently that was not the vision of the creator, and he got more money, more funding. He put in more detail, and everything looked like some weird Simpsons character with like big toes, and like it was just so grotesque. And everything was better. The mechanics were better. There were more weapons. I just couldn't stand it because the art was so atrocious.
Yeah.
Without never having played either of those games, I'm imagining going from like Sword and Sorcery to like Psychonauts or something like that.
It was actually it was very Double Fine production style, but it was like Klasky Chupo, but like it was almost like a Mega Babies level of gross. Like I don't know if those references are hitting or not, but
yeah, by your tone again, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Nice. So what are you working on now then, Ricky?
Well, I'm working on a story right now with an artist, and like I was saying before, I on my train or on my bus ride to work, I've been watching a lot of anime. So it's I've been watching a lot of like mech anime, like the original Gundam and stuff, and
cool.
like Evangelion. And so I was like trying to think of like how I would do like mechs and stuff. So this new story is kind of like a mech story where these robots come to this Earth-like planet and are stealing like the planet's resources. And then one night, like these kids go out to just have fun at night, but then they end up getting killed by these robots. And then the Earth brings them back to life with like these giant tree mechs kind of thing to like fight against these robots. So then it's just a big excuse for giant robot battles. But
I mean, it's most of mecha.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So is it just curious about that? Are the mechs that the like people use, are they like naturally based? Like you said, trees.
Yeah, so one's like
a
a giant like redwood, one's like this like big flower kind of thing.
Gonna get my inner druid on then.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. Right?
Thinking night elves, very Warcraft 3.
Yeah. So I think it's gonna be pretty cool. I could maybe like pull up some stuff to show you guys. I don't know. Let me see.
Oh, nice. If you feel like it, Ricky, if you have anything you want to share with the class, feel free to send it. Like for the podcast, feel free to send it my way, and I'll put it in. Yeah, I'll put it in the notes.
Can you screen share on this?
Yeah, it's the double. It's the double piece of paper on the bottom right.
Did it work?
I can see your screen. Yeah.
Oh, neat.
So like, yeah, these are like kind of the characters here, and this would be like the.
I like that.
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
And this is like the flower one, and then the flower one can like this is kind of like when it's like angry and like when it's normal.
Oh man, that reminds me a lot of I forget who did the art for Tank Girl, but I'm getting like Gorillas vibes.
Yeah, especially like so I can show you some of like the final inked pages, and yeah, like stuff like this. Yeah, like.
Oh yeah, that is really neat.
Hopefully it turns out well. We'll see. I mean, it's always like you never really know with comics until it's like done. So
yeah, well, I mean, everyone's like creative juices come together.
Yeah,
and,
right.
There's so much.
And this is kind of like where we're thinking for the cover here, like stuff like this.
I like that.
I like it's like the trees are growing out of like the dead person. So.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Super modern.
Do you have a working title for this yet, or?
No, that's the hardest part. I don't have anything. I don't know.
Treebeard 2.
Yeah, right. Titles are so hard. I was thinking like Undergrowth or something, but then you kind of want to bring in like the mech aspect of it too. So maybe like stylized Undergrowth in like a mechanical kind of way. I don't know.
Probably from my experience, the best thing to do is throw a bunch of ideas out there, write them down, whatever. Don't take any of them seriously, and then just ignore it for a while, and your mind will percolate on it, and you'll eventually you'll be like, oh, boom, this is perfect.
Oh my God, you just completely nailed like the process I do for a lot of my like whatever work is like put it like do it as much as you can, put it away, and just completely forget about it, and then your subconscious is like doing all that work, fermenting it.
let's jump into a mini topic on that point, because somebody provided this idea to me, and spend the next few minutes talking about this. So, writer's block. As a comic writer, how do you experience writer's block, and how do you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, I experience writer's block all the time, and I usually overcome it by talking through the problems with other people, because then they'll kind of bring in ideas and stuff, and that'll help. But yeah, I don't know, it's tough, and it's so like depressing too, because you sit there and you're like, I'm just wasting my time trying to think of this all the time, and nothing ever comes out. And I usually find, like, before I go to sleep, like, when you put everything down, you're like, okay, now's the time to sleep. That's like a good time to like think about stuff and like think of the story. But yeah, I don't have any techniques to get over writer's block. I kind of just keep taking the chisel to it until eventually it disappears.
Yeah, persistence.
But it's the worst. I hate it so much. How do you guys like get over it?
Oh man. Let's who, me first?
Yeah, go
yikes. So, like, again, to talk about how
Alex is getting writer's block on answering.
I'm getting speaker's block right now. I like to have conversations with myself. And I like to talk to myself, which is a very crazy person way of doing it. And I'm very glad now I have my own apartment, so I can kind of like get the ground bed for that. Working out's great. I got a lot of good ideas in the sauna. Hot, cold stuff, to be completely honest. And I never really made the connection, but if I can change my state, it's kind of like I imagine all my ideas, because really, like, creativity to me is like you take two elements and you put them together that they don't belong, and you're creating new connections with things that already exist. So like my mind goes to George R. R. Martin and like the I forget because it's been so many years, but like who's like the Maori Genghis Khan type dudes?
Yeah, the Dothraki.
The Dothraki, like he took so many different elements of history and he melded them together in such a way that you couldn't see their disparate parts. And that to me is a really good sign of like something that's really been thought out, instead of like, oh, they're orcs from Lord of the Rings, or like ancient China people, and then you put them into your story. But so you're taking these whatever specific elements and you're mashing them together. If I can change my state through working out really hard, or through taking a walk, or having a conversation with a friend, it's almost like you take that it's not the Yahtzee ball, but whatever, all those letters in a ball, and you shake them up and they create different words. What's that called? Boggle. Thank you. King Hill was a pro in Boggle and King of the Hill. That's how I remember that. So anyway, you change your state, you shake up the Boggle thing, and for me, like, if I could take it, if I get an ice bath going. I know that's very extreme, and that sounds like a big macho, like, oh, I just take an ice bath, I can read. But or like a sauna or whatever. You just put yourself into a completely different state, and it's like where you were, the angle you were thinking at the problem from before, you're at a completely new angle, and it's like, oh, it's like the different dimension, and you can put things together. Making sure that I'm hydrated, like, it's really boring stuff, like making sure that
so Alex tortures himself until he figures out anything. It's like anything. I'll write anything down just to stop, like, boiling myself or freezing myself in an ice bath. No, that makes sense. Yeah, you shake up the flow. Your brain will come at it from a different way. You're not just kind of, and I think both approaches, even though they're pretty much the exact opposite. One is stay the course, and the other is, attack it from the side, Raptor style. But I think either are viable, right? Yeah. Now, Ricky, have you ever written a story where a character takes you somewhere that you really didn't expect them to go, and it kind of creates problems later, but then you realize it works and it fits and it's the way it should go? That's a very specific question, but I remember an author was talking about this, where she had this kind of like loose skeleton for her outline for her series, and then she's like, wait a minute, no, my character this character would never do that. He's going to do this. And then she had to like throw out all of her notes because it just worked better, but she didn't expect it. As she kind of learned her character, it just kind of went in that direction. Is that kind of stuff that's ever happened with you? Or
yeah, maybe not necessarily like as I'm writing it, maybe more of as I'm planning it out. Like with Happily Ever After, originally it was like a prince kidnaps a princess, and I was really struggling to figure out what happens next, and I just kind of realized that I was like bored with that idea that like a prince kidnapping a princess has already been done. So it's like, what else can I add to that? So then when I switched it to a princess kidnapping a princess, I was like, oh, okay, so now this is like opened up everything, and now all of a sudden, there's multiple paths that you can go, multiple things that you can do, and it just kind of blew it all up out of the water, which was great. And then,
from a reader's perspective, that one decision really did open up a lot of the rest of the story and the kind of progressive perspective. So it's one of those things where you're like, wait, how many people did they try to cast to play Han Solo before they picked Harrison Ford? Like, that's, now that you're telling me this, that you originally thought of doing like a prince capturing a princess, I'm like, oh, no, that would never work.
Exactly, right? It's kind of boring. So but usually the way I write is like I'll make a guide that's like loose enough that it can change as it goes, and it often does, right? Like in Happily Ever After, that one like big knight character who like is supposed to save her at the end, like he was literally supposed to save her at the end and be like this amazing guy. But then, like, as it was going, I was like, he kind of sucks. So then, like, as it was going, it was like, yeah, okay, well, maybe he's not as good as he thought he was, or maybe there's something that happens that makes him not as good. So then, after a while, he became like this like joke character, right?
Nice.
Do you have any rituals for writing? Do you like to write in a specific place with a specific music on, in specific clothes?
Well, not the clothes, but I'll go to
Robes.
this second cup. There's a second cup near my house that I go to pretty much like every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday after work. I'll go to that second cup, and I'll just like take like 2 hours and try and do as much as I can. And I'll get like a coffee and a cake. That's like the big thing. Nice. But it's kind of bugging me now because the second cup near my house is like such crappy cakes. So it's like kind of ruining my flow.
You're gonna like dedicate your next book to the crappy second cup. You're like, the reason this book sucks, everyone, is because there's anger the whole time.
You gotta make it more subtle. It's like, oh, it's a story about this evil corporation that makes really crappy cakes that suck.
Exactly, right? And then in terms of music, I'll try to listen to like as loud music as possible. So like I'll listen to a lot of like death metal or like grindcore metal and stuff, just so that it's like so that it kind of like it shuts down everything in your head besides what you're trying to like listen or you're trying to think about. You know what I mean? So like drowns literally everything out because it's so loud and so noisy that you almost can start writing from that spot. You know what I mean?
Do you have a go-to album?
No, not really. But although recently for the new book, I've been listening to a lot of like Bad Religion and like the Distillers and stuff. So that's not necessarily like death metal or anything, but it's like fast kind of punk music. So it works out pretty good.
This is a total side plug, but just speaking to that, and I know many listeners probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but the author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure would be listening to a lot of mid-70s and 80s rock, prog rock, and when he was thinking of names for his characters, he would literally just take the names of the songs and the artists he was listening to at the time. So you've got characters named like Zeppelin.
Oh, looks like we lost him again. Actually, I remember Alex was telling me about that. I have yet to actually check it out, but
but they're all just named after like old classic rock characters.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that I didn't like get because I never really watched any of it. For Dragon Ball Z as an example, I never watched Dragon Ball Z, and then someone pointed out that they're all like vegetables. I was like, wait, and the only one I knew was like Goku and Vegeta, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, okay, Vegeta makes sense. And then someone was like, oh, Piccolo, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Let me see if I can add him back into the call. I think he's still technically on the call, but he's Well, what we're gonna do is we'll basically stall here, fellow listeners, for a few minutes, and then we'll switch into our ad absurdum topic. But what about you, Ricky? Do you have any questions for me or for?
You're like some like crazy space person, man. Like, how is that? How does that happen? How do you become like a a space person. That seems so crazy to me.
Right. Well, let me define the boundary terms of our condition here. So I am currently a satellite and space market analyst. So what that means is if there is an opportunity, hey, welcome back, Alex.
Thank you.
We're talking about Dallas's space work.
Sweet.
So yeah, I'm a satellite and space market analyst, and what that means is if there, it looks like he's lagging. Oh.
Did you hear that? Did you hear my stressing out?
I heard you lag, but yeah, okay. So what that means is if there's a market opportunity for the satellite or space industry, then my company is looking into it. So an example might be, well, how much money is made by selling satellite internet all over the world? Or how much money is to be made from developing rockets or launching satellites or building satellites. And it's more than just money. It's about technology development, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so that's what I am now. My background was I did a bachelor's of space engineering at York in Toronto. It's how we all met through that university. And then I went on to do a master's in space studies and engineering. So how I got into it, I mean, I was just that kid that was watching Star Trek all the time. I always had a fascination with space. It's, it's interesting.
Frontier.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's different. It's just that exploration kind of thing. And always fascinated by it. And then what I went through school to be an engineer because, well, again, I was watching Star Trek and going, wait, none of this is even close to reality yet. Like, come on, what are we doing here? Like, let's get this going. So I really wanted to join with that, and I did that for a while. But it's a difficult field to get into. It's very small, and I ended up kind of changing course to more of this analyst side of things, where I take my knowledge and understanding of the technology and I compare it with other aspects to understand, is this a real thing? Is this going to be a market that takes off? Is this a technology that people are going to be using? And yeah, I've been really happy with it. So in terms of how I got here, a lot of luck, hard work, government loans. It's crazy actually, because like I'm living now in France, and North America and England, student debt is a normal thing. It's like if you want to go to university, you got to pay a lot of money, and you pay it off for the not for the rest of your life, but for a long time. Here in Europe, it's like unless you want to go for something really specialized, it's pretty much covered. So like
what?
Yeah, like my girlfriend. Yeah. Now my girlfriend had a special case. Her mom was a single mom, so like there's some kind of things there. But basically, from what I understand, all she really had to pay for was her apartment and some like small administrative fees. Whereas like when I was going to university, it was $600 a class.
Yeah.
And then like 10 to 15 classes a year, and then 4 years. So
adds up.
Yeah, and that's just tuition, right? So a lot of hard work, a lot of luck, persistence. I decided I had one advantage over most people, which is at a young age, I knew what industry I wanted to work in. And I knew what industry I wanted to work in, and that gave me a direction. And I kept it flexible enough that I could kind of shift, to this career or to this education or whatever. I was very lucky that way, because if you don't know what career or what industry you want to work in, I mean, most people are in that boat and they try a bunch of different things or whatever. I always bring up, there's this perfect little comic, I'll put it in the link below, but Chris Hadfield, Canadian astronaut, said, if you try to make your life in the pursuit of the direction of the career that you want, and his idea was, first off, make everything about moving in that direction. But secondly, don't aim for one specific job, or if you are, be happy if you land, it's the whole shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. Well, he wanted to be an astronaut, but at the time, Canada didn't even have a space program.
Oh,
So he's
really?
like, well, in order to be an astronaut, I got to be good at, I got to be physically fit and I got to be good at like math and physics and everything. So he pursued that. And then he started doing he was a test, like a jet pilot and like a test pilot, because he was like, well, we still don't have a space industry, but this is, you have to have some level of like training and blah, blah, blah. And kind of what happened was is he just kept making his whole life about moving in that one direction, and he probably would have been satisfied to never be an astronaut, but he was still moving in that direction with everything he did. So that's kind of what I did, but again, it was mostly just the luck that I had one kind of target, not market, but industry involved in mind, and then everything else kind of became, how do I get from here to there?
Oh,
Yeah.
man, that's cool. It's cool that you knew what you wanted to do like at a young age. You know what I mean?
The more as I get older, I realize it, like for me it was normal, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to do. But as I get older, I realize no, that is extremely fortunate.
Yeah,
Like
right.
most people, they don't know, they need to be exposed to a bunch of different things, and that's fine. But it can cause some,
Yeah.
some. But the
Like,
other, yeah.
like Alex, did you always want to be a teacher or?
No, not at all. In
No?
fact, I still don't.
Okay.
It was the family profession. I was basically told while I was in film, you're going to do this, and you're going to try at least to get into the education program. And I said, okay. I got in, and it's very interesting because it's almost the opposite of Dallas's experience. I actually wanted to speak on that too. With not only did you know what you wanted to get into, but once you were there, it was like still something you wanted to do. It wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to be like a director, or I can't wait to get into be in plumbing or whatever. And you get in, and you're like, oh, this isn't what I wanted. But yeah, I went through, and it was, instead of something that like I really wanted, I just found I was quite good at it, but it was not something that I wanted really to do at all, actually. And it's interesting because being in education for so long, it's been like about 5 years since I've been working in a school board. I've learned a set of skills which is similar to I can't remember the name of the person, but he did the Dirty Jobs TV
Oh,
show.
Mike Rowe.
Thank you. Mike Rowe is really like insightful comment of like, it's more important rather than to do like live your passion, but to bring your passion with you. And the skill set that I've slowly accrued over this period of time is like what I've found as I've gotten older is like, it's more universal. Things like patience and determination, organization, punctuality, and like dealing with other people's personalities and proclivities like that, working in a hierarchy and a structure. And it's honestly the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, honestly, because I've been able to do such good work and make such a big contribution. But yeah, it's something I'm like, I have no interest in education, and now I find myself in this position where like I'm getting pretty good at it, but I haven't found my niche within it. I think I need to start teaching older kids, or actually maybe high school. I think that's really where I am going to flourish. That's really where my wheelhouse is. But it was definitely, the journey was like breaking into something and finding what my personal motivation was, rather than the incentive of, oh, I'll get to be in this career, because I never really wanted to be. So it's like, well, what is this giving me alternative to that? Well, okay, I'm building character. I'm getting stronger as a person. I'm able to bounce back from really difficult criticisms, which wasn't really a strong suit of mine. And now I feel personally is like a really huge boon of mine, is that if I'm pushed, if I'm criticized, I can really like turn that to my advantage. And it's also been a really good creative outlet, because with the other jobs I've worked, like I've loaded boxes on a pier, I've answered phones, I've been a waiter, I've worked in catering. All of those careers, it's really hard to like squeeze the variety out of that day, right? Like especially like I've not done retail hell for any long stint of time like some of my friends have, but like if you're in the same room every day, if you're with the same menu every day, it's with the same people, like at least with education, you get a new crop of kids every year. So that at least lends itself to some kind of variety.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I was going to say that like anything, more important than the title is the is the subtext of it. So even like me, it's like, oh, I want to work in the space industry. Even if I was like, I want to be a space engineer, it's important to understand, what does a space engineer do, and what will you be doing if you become one of those things? Do you want to do that? Because you may be just as happy as something else that has the same kind of goal or the same purpose, but a different title or a different, industry. So, yeah.
Yeah, like even with book publishing, like I'm not reading books 24/7, you know what I mean? Like I haven't read a book in a while. But like it's weird because I really enjoy what I do, but I'm not like a bookworm, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, what is it that I'm enjoying? And I guess it's like I like the idea of storytelling, and I like people enjoying stories. So then that kind of fits into that. And then I like the production aspect of it too, where you're making physical books for people to read.
Yeah.
So, but overall, I wouldn't consider myself, like there's so many people in the industry that are so passionate about like reading and authors and stories and stuff. Then I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't name 5 novels. You know what I mean?
You're a traveling bard. You're not a librarian.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with either career, but it's just, it's one or the other. So speaking of segues, we're going to jump into our ad absurdum portion of this to round out the podcast. So this was suggested, Ricky, what was his name? I forget.
Alvaro Cruz.
All right. Well, thank you for the idea.
Alvaro Cruz.
Yeah. The question is, basically, I might be misremembering, but it's basically, what kind of chip, like potato chip, do you like, and what does that say about your personality? So give it a few seconds to think about that, and let me read over his comment, make sure what does the choice and flavor of potato chip say about you on a grand scale of being? Do you play it safe with regular? Do you go all dressed because you can't decide, etc.? So I think that was right up our alley of ad absurdum. So
okay, I can jump in right now. So I am a regular flavored Pringles boy. I'm a Pringles man. And yes, derision. This is a hot take because it's a very controversial chip. Pringles is kind of like the Frankenstein of chips. It's sort of like the GMO of chips because it is not actually a potato. It doesn't originate in a sliced potato format. The potato is crushed, it's smushed into a slurry, and much like a McNugget, it's then pressed into that horseshoe shape.
It's the plywood of potato chips.
It's the plywood of potato chips. It's very apt. So here's why I like it. One, it's like, put that on not once you pop, you can't stop. It's like potato plywood, everybody. Every chip is the same. You don't get any crumb dust on the bottom. The tube is like aesthetically pleasing. So what that says about me is I feel like I'm a routine guy. I'm zany. I'm an animated guy. But when it comes down to brass tacks, I like the same kind of stuff. I wear the same clothes every day. I read the same books over and over again. I could eat the same food for years. I have. And I like the same chip. And if every chip is the same shape, you can put it into your mouth the same way. It's like every experience is guaranteed to be identical to the previous chip. I don't want none of these like gigantor, mouth, they slice the side of your cheek open. It's like the Captain Crunch of chips. I'm thinking like Miss Vicky's. So, and that being said, I also like to squeeze everything out of life. And it's almost like if my life was a Pringles can and you go down to the last chip, it's still like a whole chip. It hasn't deteriorated. And that's the kind of life I want to live. When I'm an 80-year-old Pringles boy, I want to have that final crunch to have just as much, pith when I'm like an old like Bob Proctor type, Norman Vincent Peale type, and I'm like 82 and I'm still doing the same stuff and I've still got the same energy. That's my Pringles way. The Tao of Pringles.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. All right. Strong answer right out of the gate. Yeah. Ricky, do you have any thoughts here?
I'm usually an all dressed kind of guy, and I guess like what Alvaro was saying, that's kind of like an all or nothing. I like to experience as much as I can. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's still familiar, right? Because you've been eating it for so long. And so even though it's all the flavors don't change. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a familiar experience, but it's still a bunch of different experiences at once. And some other companies try to do all dress, but it's never as good as like the Ruffles all dress. That's like the one that you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, I mean, I'm a big fan of Doritos too. So
It's because you like
Doritos is controversial. That's that's like a meme chip.
You don't think that's a chip?
Oh, well, I mean, it qualifies as it is technically a corn tortilla.
Listen to that lilt of his voice. Oh yeah.
Costanzaing all over the place. Doritos is a lifestyle. Doritos is not a chip. Doritos is like a gamer fuel. Like you gotta be getting those those victory royales if you're into the Doritos world. You gotta be getting those like rare loot.
See, chips. I don't know, man. I have a problem with your whole analysis because I am also a like Lay's or Ruffles original like potato chip.
Really?
Well, here's the thing. I love a lot of different kinds. All dressed is great. Dill pickle I like. Ketchup, Doritos, Pringles are fine. But I like the salt and vinegar. The classic ones I like are the Ruffles, like just regular salted potato chip. And the thing is, I don't know if potato chip spectrum is wide enough to cover both you and me, Alex, because like you're like if I had to like turn you into a potato chip, you would not become a Pringles like chip. You would become a Dorito.
I would become a Dorito. That's my chip astrology sign.
The thing is you're right. You and I, it's funny. I would consider, if we went to ice cream flavors for a second, the closest one for me would be caramel, butterscotch, because I'm basically vanilla, but I've got a streak of butterscotch through it. Okay. You would be the same thing, but opposite. Like, is this zebra black with white stripes or white with black stripes? Because you would be zany with an undertone of like normalcy.
Yeah, like
right?
butter.
And that's what I'm saying is you're like oh I'm Ruffles. I'm like, what? Your volume is too high of life. Your enthusiasm is too great. You must shine out of the box. I approach a conversation like a slow moving. I don't even know what's a good animal here. I don't know. Think of like
an elephant.
It's just like a slow moving, and I just enter the conversation and I drop a line or two that people go, oh crap, I didn't see you there. And also
funnel web spider.
That's a really insightful point. You enter a conversation like the Kool-Aid man, and everybody like throws flowers at you, being like, I don't know who this guy is, but he's amazing. Is he our new CEO? I think he is.
Whoa. So the Kool-Aid man in like an Indian marriage? Is that what we're talking about with like garlands of flowers?
I don't know. Like you enter the scene a lot more strongly than a regular Ruffled potato chip.
I do come on strong, but but like you said, it's the foundation. The foundation of my zaniness is mundanity.
So what if we combine? What if you had a Pringles chip that somehow adhered to the back of a Dorito? Would that be like be you?
What if
like the top of your mouth?
Pringles.
Doritos. Which do you prefer more, the shape or the feel of the Pringle? Because definitely. Then I would.
Oh, the shape. The shape is like everything.
So then Dorito on top or Dorito on bottom for the taste, and Pringle on top that gets stuck in that.
You're complicating things. You're complicating too much. The Dorito is coming from the corn powder. They pushed that stuff into a triangle. You just got to get the new, like, the Gutenberg printing press. You just got to put the Dorito dust in there and just get that into the Pringle horseshoe. I feel we're on a new level right now. So if we contacted these people and we said, hey, listen, Pringles, get your Pringle technology, go to Doritos. They could corner the chip market with this.
Don't they have Pringle corn chips?
Pringoritos. Doringles. Ladies and gentlemen.
They have Pringle tortillas already.
That's what I'm talking about.
You have to introduce those to your next party. That's funny. See, this whole flavor thing, it reminds me of the story that my girlfriend and I always have. She went to buy me ice cream at her like favorite ice cream place. This first time I had really tried ice cream here in the city of Strasbourg where I am. And she's like, oh, this is the best place. What do you want? And I was like, vanilla? And she's like, what is wrong with you? Like, why would you order vanilla? And it's like, because you asked me what I wanted, and that's what I want. Like, I'm not immediately like, I want triple raspberry whatever. So I try to live as much of the butterscotch in the caramel as I can. But
to be fair, if they can't get vanilla right, then why would you try any other flavor, right?
Yeah,
that's
what
true.
I'm
saying, Ricky.
I do that at restaurants all the time. It's like, I'm gonna order your
potatoes.
Yeah, I'm gonna order your thing.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. If they can't get that, or a steak, like if they can't get it's a piece of meat with salt and pepper. If you can't get that right, what the hell?
I do know for a fact that part of the reason that I like dill pickle chips is because most people don't, and where that started was you go to a party, everybody's digging into the Ruffles apparently, and I'm like, oh, there's this other chip over here. I'm gonna try this, and I do like them. I do like dill pickles, but I like ketchup. I like kind of the alternative flavors because I can kind of hoard them to myself if I want. Like they're not that popular, and that does fit a little bit into my personality because I have what I would consider like an inverse emotional barometer. If I'm sensing the mood is one way, my brain will sometimes like supplement the other emotion, and normally it's a good thing because most people are like, I'm gonna complain, I'm in a bad mood. I'm like, well, we're still alive, that's cool. But it can also work to my detriment where everyone's like, we're having a great time, aren't you? And I'm like, should I? Because I'm not. So
don't tell me to be happy.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse.
Can we talk a little bit about chip faux pas over here? I want to put
the chip.
So double dip, that's a classic. That's like a 1994 faux pas. So like here's a couple of things. One, I'm gonna put a flavor on blast here. Salt and vinegar. This is I didn't last time I checked. This wasn't a Ridley Scott movie where you can crush up a chip flavor, put it on the floor, and have it acidically burn through the lower 3 floors of whatever structure you're in. That is too much pH. Get that business, get that bunk out of my face. I will never touch.
See, and I like him because he doesn't.
It is simply too. Like what human being likes a salt and vinegar?
Have you had the Miss Vicky salt vinegar, the malt vinegar?
Okay, malt. You have a point, Ricky. You have a point with it. But that's straight up clear acid. Like you take it. Like if I inhale while I'm eating, I feel like mustard gas is going into my body. Like I feel like I need to have a urine rag on my face. It's terrible. But here's another thing that completely like the millennial crowd, we're big optimizers, right? We like to live a very purposeful life. We like technology. The whole idea of eating Doritos with chopsticks, that had a lifespan of about 6 months, and I want to put anybody else who did that on blast because just orange fingers, just roll with it. We have one hand.
Well, we have a friend who does that a lot, especially when he's playing video games. He'll because he does. Well, I mean, it makes sense. You don't want your fingers all over the controller or whatever.
It's a sign of fidelity. It's a sign of power. If you have that orange controller, people look at you, they know you've marked your territory.
Oh, man.
Know you're a serious. That's what I'm talking about, meme status with the Doritos.
Right, where the controller is like slick at that point. It's like
it's not only tuning it up. It's like a walk, really.
No one else wants to use your controller, and no one else can use your controller because they just can't handle I've got my settings set to L2, R2, and Dorito like.
You're a power game.
Friday night Dorito layout on my fucking
And the Dorito taco, right? Chips are now evolving. Yeah. I see your face of consternation, Dallas. It's true. Taco Bell has replaced its hard shell taco with Dorito. It's just a Dorito in a horseshoe. So you put taco meat inside. So that's
delicious.
I mean, if you think about like tortilla chips, right? And then you think hard shell taco, it's kind of the same thing, but I wouldn't make a Dorito one.
No. And here's my final thing. So like, okay, the hermit crab will take its surrounding environment and will use it as a shell, right? They'll find a shell. A monkey will lick a stick and then put it into an anteater hill and then use its surroundings. When you're eating chips, particularly ruffled chips, I don't know about you, but you eat enough chips and the back molars of your mouth get like coated, clubbed in chip matter, and that allows to further eat more chips. And you can't dig them out of your teeth, because that is a fait accompli. That is a blind alley. It's a Sisyphusian nightmare. You have to just roll with it. You're eating chips. They get crunched up into your molars, and you take your new and improved chip eating teeth and you use that to consume at a higher rate.
It's like when you play the game Lemmings and you sacrifice a bunch of them that create a bridge that the new ones walk over.
That's right. You plant trees that the shade your grandchildren will go under. The chips that's not going down your throat, those are coating your teeth as a sacrificial offering to future chip eats.
This podcast is brought to you in part by toothpicks.
Yeah, please, Lance.
Well, Ricky, any final thoughts on chips or anything you want to share with our beloved listeners out there?
We're running a Kickstarter right now for a book called Cauldron. It's kind of like a heavy metal inspired comics magazine kind of thing, and so our goal was $999, and we've gone past that. So if you back the Kickstarter, you definitely get the book. And
nice.
Yeah, and
sure thing.
I guess I don't know. I'll send you a link and you can put it up. But yeah,
put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. It's like it's not quite like a throwback where it's like super retro horror, heavy metal stuff, but it's like pretty modern, I think. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Nice. All right, well, Ricky, thank you very much for being on here today. Hopefully you had a good time. For those listening, definitely check out some of the links. I think there's a wide enough variety there that should cross a few genres off your list. And thank you all very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you when we see you.
See you when you see you. Hope you have a great afternoon, and keep it absurd. Listen to the line.
Thanks.